The following is a presentation of the BP8 Podcast Network.
Hi, folks. Want to welcome you back to another episode of What's Up Wake Forest, brought to you by the BP8 Podcast Network and BP8 Media. We're glad you're here to join us once again. We have another special guest today. Our guest is Kip Padgett, who is the town manager of the town of Wake Forest. So, Kip, welcome. Glad you could join us this morning.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. So let's begin. You started here in Wake Forest. You moved here 3 years ago now?
Yeah, in July of 2015.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about what brought you to Wake Forest. Where'd you start? I know you're in the words of Louis Grizzard, you are Bulldog born and Bulldog bred. Tell us a little bit about the Kip Padgett that we don't know.
And to finish that out, I'll be Bulldog until the day I'm dead.
There you go. Absolutely.
I'm originally from Georgia. That's where I spent all my career in local government. Before I moved to North Carolina, I was in Gainesville, Georgia, which is about 30 miles north of Atlanta on Lake Lanier. One thing that brought me to North Carolina is just North Carolina is such a great place to manage. It's one of the top states to manage in. I always wanted to manage in North Carolina. And also, my wife's from North Carolina. We've been married about 18 years, and she grew up in Elon, North Carolina.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Okay. Very cool.
And her family now have moved back to their home place, which is in Warrenton, which is about 45 minutes from here.
Very good.
And I have two kids, a 19-year-old who's a sophomore at at Wake Tech, and then a 16-year-old who is a sophomore at Wake Forest High School.
Very good. Very good. So, Kip, when you interviewed with the town of Wake Forest, what was it that caught your attention about the town?
It was the community feel you got, the small town atmosphere, but yet it's a growing town. It's close to Raleigh and a lot of the health facilities and amenities, and we have a lot of amenities here ourselves in Wake Forest. One thing that really caught my attention when I was riding around preparing for the job and looking at things for my interviews, I noticed a lady came out and was taking her broom and dusting off her awning downtown. And that just showed me the pride that people had in the area and how they love their businesses and try and take care of them. You don't see that in a lot of towns these days. So it's really that special feel that Wake Forest has. Very
cool. Very cool. So let's kind of get into some of the things going on in the town, because I know a lot of our listeners want to know what's being built there, what's being built here, and that kind of thing. So let's start out with the downtown Renaissance plan. There's a lot of work that's going on South White Street between Elm and Holding Avenue. Can you tell us a little bit about what the town is doing down there?
Sure. We're continuing our downtown streetscaping. Several years ago, we did Phase 1, which is where White Street Brew and B&W Hardware, we did a lot of the streetscaping there. And we're continuing that now on the other side of White Street from Elm to Holding. And one of the reasons we're doing this is, I said, just to continue the streetscaping program, but also Powerhouse Row, a new mixed-use development, is breaking ground, has already began doing some clearing, and they're going to be really revitalizing that corner area of Elm Street. And so this just carries on what they're doing and what we've done previously on White Street.
And for those listeners that did not listen to our first episode, that Powerhouse Row is actually being developed by the former Raleigh city manager, Russell Allen, who has come to the town on a couple of occasions with projects, and this one was approved, I guess, about 6 months ago,
That's right.
7 months ago, and so we're seeing a lot of growth there. It's going to be built right next to the railroad tracks. For those of you that have been here for a while, that's where the rides used to be when Meet in the Street would be held. It's that corner right there on South White Street in Elm. So, and we've also got the Stanley Martin townhomes that are being built downtown. There's a lot of talk about development in downtown Wake Forest. What is, we've seen the Renaissance plan online. What is a lot of folks want to know what a timeline is for something like that. How long does it take for a downtown revitalization when you're doing something like this? How long does it usually take to take hold?
To fully implement one, it takes about 15 to 20 years. However, the Renaissance plan we have in the update, it lays out stuff for us to do over the next 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years, so incremental. A lot of changes you'll see to begin with are simple things like a parklet, which is a area where we take downtown and maybe take up a go or loading zone to have more outdoor seating, maybe some different striping along Elm Street and some of the other areas to increase on-street parking, but also to create shared lanes, bike lanes. And then the more construction type, like a downtown playground or a downtown spray ground, something like that the Renaissance plan calls for, that may be 10, 15, even 20 years out.
Okay, terrific. Okay, so next we're going to get into everybody's favorite subject in Wake Forest, traffic. So let's talk a little bit about some of the improvements being made. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with the Stadium Drive project. What's happening there? What's the time frame on it? I know there are folks with kids at Wake Forest High School that are wondering what caused the change in plans for the traffic flow and all of that. Can you give us some background on that?
Sure, and as being a parent of Wake Forest High School, I'm in that traffic every morning taking my son to school. It is going to be what's called a complete streets project. In other words, you're going to have your travel lanes for your cars, a turn lane, and then you're also going to have a multi-use trail and bike lane. So people who are riding their bikes or just walking will have an area as well, especially since it's so close to a school within the neighborhoods. We had to make some changes this year working with the school for the traffic patterns. And the main reason we did that is because of what's going on Stadium Drive. It's going to be hard to queue up or stack on Stadium Drive to turn into the school. So we had to find another way to make sure that the kids are dropped off safely by their parents and then the school buses can get in and out safely. So that's the reason we changed the traffic patterns. And this project should be through about this time next year. It's a long process. It's a big project, but I think once it's done, everybody will be happy with what they see because we're going to have a red light there at Rock Springs and also a traffic circle at Wingate that'll also help with some traffic flow issues.
So there's actually a traffic light located on that Rock Springs Road as you're going down towards the stadium and the parking deck and all of that.
That's correct.
Perfect. Okay. Sounds good. So next project coming up, the big one, we're not closing the bridge this time, but let's talk about Rogers Road. Going to put an overpass over Rogers Road. Tell us a little bit about that project.
Yeah, that is, everybody knows Rogers Road. It's a challenge, and when I first got here, we closed the bridge, so that was my baptism by fire to what we were, to being the town manager in Wake Forest. But, this year, or in a couple of years, we're going to do some work with an overpass of the railroad. And the reason we're doing that is to make it easier on Rogers Bridge so we can have more through traffic. Hopefully it'll be 4 lanes all the way through then at that point. But the most important thing is Rogers Road will not be closed while we're doing that project or while DOT is doing that project, because it's important that people be allowed to move through the intersections and move through the road easily, because it is a major corridor for us now in Wake Forest.
Absolutely. The Dairy Depot and companies like that will be glad to hear that
That's
news.
Right.
So along that same lines with Rogers Road, one of the questions that we've received from feedback on one of our previous podcasts was, why is the entrance at Heritage Middle and Heritage Elementary, why is there only one way in and one way out? Do you have any insight on that one? I know that at one point the town was working with Wake County Schools, and the school system is who has control over that, and they, for some reason, said no. Do you have any insight on that?
No, that happened before I got here, but I do know that there has been some talk of extending that on through to Heritage High School. There is a lot of open land there that the school board owns and the town owns, but it's very challenged topography. There's a lot of hills and granite, and so it will make it very expensive and challenging to build something.
Gotcha. So in other words, theoretically, if we could do it perfectly, it'd connect to Foundation Drive, which is what you travel down when you turn off of Forestville Road and you're going down to the football stadium. That's where that's located,
That's right.
Correct? Okay, very good. And then another question we've received is the traffic light that's recently been put up right near the entrance to Kids Are Kids and right there after the railroad tracks. If you're coming from 1A, there's a temporary traffic light there. Where is that traffic light going to go when the Rogers Road Bridge is finished?
It's going to go just down the road to the entrance where Shuckers and Real McCoy's, those 2 shopping centers, and then the apartment complex across the street. This is just, as you said, that's just a temporary location right now until the bridge, or I'm sorry, the railroad project gets done. Then
Right.
It'll be moved down to there, and it'll be a permanent location.
Gotcha. So there's your insight for all of you that are asking questions. We had a couple folks ask that on one of our posts on the podcast, so that's a good answer. So the next thing I want to talk about is the US 1 corridor project. Capitol Boulevard is going to look a lot different in another 10 years. Can you give us some background on that and what the plans are for it?
Yeah, you're right. It's going to look very different. It's anybody who drives Capitol on a daily basis or even once or twice a week and see all the backup, especially as you get closer to Raleigh. But plans are in place now, and actually funding's in place for a lot of it, from Perry Creek Road all the way up to 98 now, the Calvin Jones bypass. There are plans to make that a limited access. In other words, you can't just pull off on the road in a driveway or anything. It's going to look more like an interstate with interchanges, where Falls of the Noose and 1A come in to Capitol Boulevard. That's going to be an interchange. So there's going to be a lot of changes, a lot of construction, and it's going to require a lot of patience from all of us. But I think it'll be good after it's done, and it's going to be a long process. But the DOT is committed to doing that, and they've already got funding lined up, which says they are committed to the process.
Well, my understanding is they've also already started the environmental studies and things like that in the first phase of it, which is from 540 up to Perry Creek Road. Is that correct?
That's right. And they've also hired a firm who's going to help them with community input and community outreach.
Okay, very good, very good. So there's a lot of talk always about the Renaissance Center and the remodeling of the Renaissance Center, which I know the sound system is much better than it was. We saw the roof go up. Tell folks a little bit about where some of the money came from that. I know we had some grants on that, and the town kicked in some money. Can you give us some insight on that?
Sure. We competed with a grant with all the other municipalities with Wake County every year or every other year, just depending on their time frame. They take money from the hotel, motel, and beverage taxes and send out a call to all the municipalities to ask for public projects, which they will help fund. And in this case, with the Renaissance Center, we put that in as a project, and I believe we were funded a little over $300,000. Of course, the town had to match that dollar for dollar, actually 2 to 1, but it was allowed us to go in and redo the Renaissance Center. If anybody has seen what it looked like before compared to now, it's a lot different. The sound system is much better, so it allows us to be more competitive. The next step in there we're going to do with that money is also set it up where we can broadcast similar to what we do the town board meetings. So if there's a public hearing or a public gathering like we had the other night to talk about projects and people can't come, we can live stream it so people can see what's going on and what's happening as well. And also offer it as a resource to people who want to rent the Renaissance Center for a wedding or things like that. We can record that for them.
Perfect. Okay. So next topic is the swimming pool. I know one of your favorite topics. Been closed for a couple years now, but it looks like it's finally getting close. There's water in it from when I went by earlier this week. So can you give us some idea of what we're seeing with that?
Yeah, I've learned a lot about pools in the past few weeks, but it is coming along. It's almost done. If you've ridden by there, you'll see that there is water. The slides are operating. The kids' features are operating. What's happening now is they are balancing the pool because it's such a large body of water. They've got to make sure the chemicals and the chlorine balances are okay. Once that's done, then they can actually call the state out to inspect everything and give us the okay to open the facility. And at this point, we do plan to open it at least for a weekend and have like a grand opening, a big celebration, just to thank everybody for their patience. But it is coming along, and we can finally see the finish line.
Very excited to see that ready
Yes.
for next year.
That's right.
So do we have any idea when the pool might open next spring?
I would say probably April or May.
Okay.
The Board of Commissioners contracted with a pool management company to help run it. And so what they'll be doing is lining up lifeguards for next year, and I think probably April, at the latest May.
Okay, very good, very good. All right, so let's get inside of Town Hall a little bit. You've made some major changes with the way that the town management process for employees and things like that. You changed up some departments and moved some things. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why you made those moves?
Sure. After being here for about 2 years, I took the time to really sit down, look at how we operate, talk to the employees, talk to the department directors to get their thoughts and find out what we could do to better interact with our customers, which are our citizens and residents, and also to improve flows at Town Hall. So we took the planning department and changed it to community development because it does so much more than just rezonings and plan reviews. It's actually helping the community grow and working with housing and things like that. So we did that. And then we've taken our engineering and made it a division of public works. Engineering does so much with road design, erosion, things like that are really more public works in nature. So we did that. Then also we took our information technology department and combined it with finance to create administrative services. And our chief financial officer is the head of that department. And the reason we did that is IT and finance are so intertwined on a daily basis on everything. It just makes sense to have that as a total separate unit reporting to one person. And then the last thing we did was create a performance management system. And if you ever looked at our budget document, you will see that. It sets up how we do business, what we're doing, and helps to justify positions or other programs. And it gives the board a snapshot year after year of how we're performing as departments in the town in general without having to go through the entire budget document or annual reports. You can readily pull this document up and see how we're performing as a town. And we're also transitioning that to a citizen portal so the citizens can see that as well.
Very good. Very good. And let's talk a little bit about the citizen portal and the improvements that have been made there. A lot more access for citizens. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That's right. We have a big belief in transparency. I believe we need to let the citizens know what's going on, how we're using their tax money. And so we created a citizen portal, and every month we're adding stuff to it. It's a work in progress. Our monthly financial reports are uploaded to it, progress reports on our grant projects and our construction projects, and pictures of how they're progressing. And then we're adding maps of transportation projects, just a lot of interaction for our citizens to look at. And along that lines, we began putting signs out, if any of you have been riding around town, that show what we're doing with the bond projects that were approved in 2014. They're the large signs that say your tax dollars at work, because we want the citizens to know what they voted on in 2014 are actually being implemented.
Awesome. So what kind of things do you see coming for Wake Forest? What are our biggest challenges? What are our greatest opportunities?
Traffic is always a challenge, no matter where you are. In Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, traffic was horrendous, and this traffic can be challenging as well. I think that as growth continues, it's a challenge to make sure that traffic is maintained as well as we can. But it's not just about building additional lanes. It's about finding alternate ways, using greenways and sidewalks so people can travel some other multimodal ways. The line bikes, I'm sure you've seen those out. They're great. They're being used a lot. And I think that those are good things to do. But we also, you hear people talking about growth. Growth's bad, growth's good. And I think that it's really what you're talking about is balanced growth or managed growth. Because, as I said earlier, my in-laws live in Warrenton, which is 45 minutes down the road. You can go there and see what happens when you don't have any growth. They just close their only grocery store. So, and people are really struggling in that area, but we're fortunate here. But it does come with growing pains. And so I think that as we move forward, we need to be cognizant of how we balance our growth so that we can make sure that we're ready for it as it continues to come. I think economic development's a big area for us, and one where there's a lot of opportunity. If anybody's been on Capitol Boulevard, you'll see how the traffic is just backed up in the mornings, people going to Raleigh or RTP, and we want to be able to create some jobs here, IT jobs here, and other jobs here where people who live here can work here as well, so that we can offer everything here. And I think that is one of the opportunities we have, and there are some exciting things hopefully we will be able to announce soon as far as partnerships, looking for some available land so that we can hopefully create some of that work environment.
Very good. So you talked about alternative modes of transportation, and that brings us to golf carts and low-speed vehicles. I know that that's being discussed by the town. What do you see as the pros and cons of the potential of allowing golf carts or low-speed vehicles in communities?
I think there are different communities have different characteristics. You have some of our retirement communities where people 55 and older live, and they have the need for golf carts for different reasons than somebody who lives in just a normal subdivision where there's no age restrictions, who have a lot of children. I think obviously safety is the biggest issue, and a way to make sure that we keep people safe, but also if there are laws broken for the golf carts is a way to make sure that we do it in a way that's equitable.
Gotcha.
for that.
Gotcha. So, do you think we will ever see where golf carts might be allowed on the Greenway for people to use for alternative transportation? Or because I know a couple of folks have mentioned that possibility. And if so, do you give them permission to cross a road? That's always a challenge. And of course, the nice thing about for example, the Dunn Creek and Smith Creek Greenway that goes underneath Rogers Road at the bridge, you could actually go from the other side of town and get into the downtown area by moving through that way. Do you think that there's a future where we might ever see something like that?
I think there could be. A lot of communities do have that. It's all in how it's how the regulations are written and how it's enforced. But people have to be aware, those on the golf cart, those that are walking, those that are biking, everybody has to be aware of their surroundings. That helps a lot in avoiding accidents, but I think it will come at some point because I think it's just a natural progression as a community. We build the greenways and we're encouraging people to use alternate forms of transportation. We need to give them the tools to use those alternate means. Absolutely.
So, is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to tell the citizens, our listeners, about?
Joyner Park. We are building a new community center at Joyner Park. Our consultants, Clark Nexon, have done a great job of making sure that the final product is going to blend into Joyner Park and a lot of the historic nature that came with Joyner Park. We are on schedule with that project. It's going to be a nice community building. It'll have a basketball court, an elevated walking track. Our park and rec department is going to move out there. So I think everybody will be pleased with it. Just like everything else is getting more expensive. I just found out yesterday that the steel was supposed to be here the 1st of September. It's going to be the 1st of October because it's hard to get steel right now because everybody wants it. And so we had to get in line, but it'll be a beautiful project once it's done.
Very good. Very good. Well, I want to thank Kip Padgett, Town Manager for the Town of Wake Forest, for being here today. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule, and I know that our listeners appreciate being kept up to date, and I hope we'll be able to bring you back once in a while so that we can get those town updates.
Sounds great. I look forward to it.
All right, terrific. For those of you listening, thanks for your time. Remember, you can see all of our BP8 podcasts through the BP8 Media Network, available on iTunes. You can also find us on Facebook at BP8 Realty, Facebook.com, or you can just search Brian Pate Real Estate and you'll find us. Of course, follow us on Twitter. You can do that at DJ Brian Pate and on Instagram at BP8 Realty. So thanks for listening. We hope to see you again the next time.